all of my savings already went in, and now you're getting a six-figure bill. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this, like, I was pretty much like crying because I'm like, okay, this is done, because I can't do this, and we're not open. So you got to remember too, out of the 2 years of COVID, we were closed for like 9 months. So we were closed half the time.
That was a clip from today's guest, Ryan Diaz. Ryan is the owner of Diaz Combat Sports in Vancouver, BC. He's a coach and a veteran of over 50 professional fights all over the world, collecting titles from Hook and Shoot North American Champion to King of the Cage Bantamweight World Champion. DCS is the gym down the street from our house where our daughter Leora does jiu-jitsu. And it is the coolest community space. I mean, the vibe there is unbelievable. They're a great community member. And it's just such an amazing thing to see what one person who just decided, hey, I just want this thing to exist, just built this really cool business that's really at the heart of our community here in Strathcona, Vancouver. So Ryan, it was a huge honor to have you on the show. And anyone who's listening to this, like whether or not you're a fan of kind of combat sports or sports, this is a really interesting episode because again, it's just an entrepreneur, a beautiful example of someone who's like, hey, I want this to exist, so they make it exist, and talking about how you manage it through COVID. So there are lots of great business lessons here and really cool life ones. But before we get to it, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. I'm Aram Arslanian, and this is One Step Beyond. My man, welcome to the show. So let's start with the first question for the uninitiated. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Ryan Diaz. I'm the owner of DCS, Diaz Combat Sports in Vancouver, Chinatown. I was a professional fighter, two-time world champion.
So the way that you came on our radar, which it's like a fun story, is we were looking for something for our daughter to do, a sport to get into. And one of my best friends, Jeff, we play in a band together. I was talking to him about getting her into capoeira, and he was like, oh, dude, you should do jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh, jiu-jitsu, kind of looking around. And your gym was literally down the street from our house. We popped in. The vibe was insane. It was like the best. It was super welcoming. I didn't feel like I was being sold anything. There was like a good age range of kids that were in the gym. Plus there was like the adults there. Your staff were super cool. And after we got our 4.5-year-old in, it was like, I don't know, like, you know, when you just feel like, oh, I think we found the thing that we're going to do with her for like the next like 10, 12, 15 years. The sense of like community, belonging, respect. So watching how you've built up that gym and learning the story made me really interested in getting on the podcast.
Awesome.
All right, so let's start with, there's so much to unpack here, but I know we've got a tight time frame because you're a really busy guy. So let's start with the gym and then we'll kind of work around that. How did you start DCS?
So the story of the gym is actually it's crazy. It's actually crazy because one of the original guys is back at the gym from Thailand teaching. And so the way the gym worked was I was living in America. I was, like we talked earlier about this, is what the one thing about Canada, which is hard sometimes for athletes, is there's not much support here for athletes outside of hockey. Like hockey, tons of support here. But say, for example, for martial arts, not so much. So I moved to the States to pursue my fight career. And I owned a house in Port Moody. And in my house, we had a garage. And then what happened was I would always come back and visit, and we'd always train in my garage. And then all of a sudden, it's like everyone kept bugging me, like, hey, Ryan, you got to open a gym in Vancouver. You got to open a gym in Vancouver. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to come back. I want to finish my career off. And so then I'm like, okay, let's do this.
And you were down in the States fighting.
Yes. Yeah. I'd always come back and visit my family, my friends, obviously, because this is where I grew up. And then, so every time I came home, everyone would come, like we would get a group of us and we'd all train in my basement. Then all of a sudden, it was 5. There was the original 5. My brother, his girlfriend, Boom, our Thai guy now that's here, his wife, and my cousin. And then so what happened was they all were competing too, like on a local scene, except for Boom. Boom was on an international scene. and they were really into the martial arts. So what they used to do is they would, when I was gone, they would just go to they all had keys. They would just go to my house, go in the garage and just train. And then when I'd come home, we would all train together. So basically, the place, I always tell everyone this, that the original DCS was just my garage, and it was just a place for me and my friends to train. And then everyone kept bugging me, hey Ryan, you got to open a gym, you got to open a gym. And then there's a saying that says, when you can do, when you can't teach. So I started getting older, and then when you fight and when you do things like, say, sports, you just, in your head, you just think you can do it forever. Like, I never ever thought that I would never not fight. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to show everyone. When I get old, I'm going to still fight. You just think that. And the thing is like, once you start getting a little older, you're like, oh, I don't think I can do this anymore. So there's that line that says, when you can do, you can't teach. So I started getting, like, you start getting this, like, I don't know if you want to call it like, what is that, midlife crisis type thing? Like, it's not that, but it's just like, okay, I hit a point where I'm like, okay, I can keep fighting, but what happens when I'm done? Like, I don't want, like, and you see what happens to a lot of athletes, not just fighters, but you always hear about the NFL guys who are broke after because they just spent all their money and they never thought of the future. So I was getting kind of like, okay, what am I going to do, after fighting? So I'm like, okay, like the saying said, okay, I guess I got to start teaching. So then I was like, okay, I better start thinking about this more. Like, I didn't 100% go into it yet because I was still somewhat competing, and so then I was like, okay, let's give this a try. I sold my house in Port Moody, and then we moved to, like, we started renting the basement suite of another gym once a week. I'll never forget. It was on Canby. It was right across the Whole Foods on Canby and Broadway, right around there. There was this Fit in 30 gym. And every Friday we would rent the basement, and they let us in, and then it would just be me and my friends training. And it would be like maybe max 8 to 10 of us, 8 to 12. Because obviously there was more people that joined along the way after the five. Like, there was a very good group. Like, the one person who came on next was Ronnie. Ronnie's still at the gym. He's an OG. And then there was a few others that came. So it was about 8 to 10 of us. So we started training there. Then all of a sudden, when I came back into town, I would teach the class on a Friday night. And then when I was gone, someone else would run it. It would be either Ronnie or Ben or my brother, whoever. And then all of a sudden, one day I came back, and the way it worked was, I train, you just train with me, and then you do what I do. Then all of a sudden, one day there was, I don't know, like 20 people. I'm like, uh-oh, I can't train. I'm going to actually have to teach now.
Yeah.
So we actually taught a class. I'm like, hey, this is going to work out. This thing could work out. So we're like, okay, let's do this 3 times a week. So when I came to town, we did it 3 times a week. And then when I was gone, either Ben or Ronnie would teach. And then, I'm still in the halfway point where I'm like, okay, am I going to live in America, or am I going to come back home? Like, I don't know. This story about the first gym was it's crazy how everything happens for a reason. And just like, it was just so weird how my tattoo guy was on the corner, right on the corner of Gore and Georgia. And there was a coffee shop, like, now it's Burst in the Beats, but there was another coffee shop there. And then there was Matchsticks all around the corner. And the reason this is why it's very important is because we usually went to Matchsticks for coffee. One day, me and Ronnie, because Ronnie, that's how me and Ronnie, we grew up together. Like, I've known him since I was like 11, 12. And then he started tattooing at my friend's, or my tattoo artist's, uh, business. And that's how, like, we got reacquainted more. And so me and Ronnie were there, and we were just like, hey, let's go get a coffee. And then normally we'd go to Matchsticks, but for some reason that day, we're like, hey, let's just go to this one. So we started walking over to this one, and there used to be another gym there before us. And we looked in, we're like, oh, they did a midnight run. They just took all their stuff, I guess, and they disappeared. And then the craziest thing happened was the owner of the building was right outside when he said it. And he says to us, he goes, do you guys need a place? And we're like, maybe. Because, like, at this point, we're thinking, okay, maybe we should get a place now. Like, because we were just renting the basement suite, right? So I'm like, maybe. And then we called him up, And it's funny because I told, like, you look at me, sometimes I might not be looking the most professional guy. And then he says, like, I call him up and I say, hey, I'm living in the States. I'm a professional fighter. I'm finishing my career. I'm thinking about coming back home and I want to open a gym. You know what he says? It's okay. He said, no. He said, no. I'm like, oh, okay. And I thought, okay,
So you've
well,
got a guy who literally was like on the street, like, "Hey, do you need a place to rent?" to suddenly being like, "That's not for me."
yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I guess that's the place not meant for us. But it was the craziest thing that happened. So when they did a midnight run, they left martial arts mats. So obviously, when the landlords, the owners of the building took over, they took all the possession of all the stuff that was left over. Month later, they called me up and they're like, "Hey, do you want do you want to buy these mats?" And I'm like, "Well, okay, you just give me a good deal." I was in America at this time. And then like we made a deal like a few $100. I'm like, okay, I'll just take them. Like you can never. The one thing I learned about being a gym owner and in martial arts, you can never have enough mats
Yeah.
because you can always put them somewhere. And then the thing is, they're always valuable because someone else will buy them because someone else wants them in their garage. You know what I mean? So like, whatever, I'll take them. I'll buy them. So we made a deal, and then I wasn't in town, so I asked one of my friends, and this actually like I really thankful for this guy because Osman, one of my very good friends, if it wasn't for him, this gym wouldn't be here too. So Osman is a contractor, professional, like he's always wearing his coveralls and he always looks like a contractor, right? So he went to go pick up the mats, and the mats were at the landlord's house. So Osman went to the landlord's house, and then and he was picking up the mats, and then he was talking to the landlord, and the landlord goes, "Yeah, place is still up for rent. The only reason we didn't want to give it to Ryan is because he didn't seem like he was very what's the word they use? Like something to do with like very trustworthy. I don't know, like not trustworthy, but we don't think that the business is gonna be there. Like they didn't think that we were gonna make it." And then Osman stuck out for his neck for me, and he said, "No, no, I'm one of the partners in the thing, and I'm part of it, so it's not like that. It's going to be very professional, this and that." Then all of a sudden, the landlord's like, "Oh, well, okay, then let's tell them that then it's still available. That we're looking. We could give it to him." So Osman calls me up and says, "Hey, they're willing to give it to you actually." And I'm like, "Oh." So I was in the States. I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." So I said, "I'll fly tomorrow and I'll make a deal." So I flew all the way back in, and it's crazy because then he had a partner. His partner Jordan. He's actually Jordan's the head of the BIA of Chinatown.
Oh, no way.
So it was actually me and my mom went to meet with Jordan, and then we made a deal, and then we had to do all this stuff, personal guarantees and all that thing, and they gave us the spot, and that's how it all started. And then I'll never forget because at the beginning, like like we talked about, running a business, opening a business is so hard.
It's totally hard.
It's so hard. There's so many things that people don't understand. Like I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people think that things just magically happen. Like even say for example this podcast, like setting up the cameras,
Yeah.
doing sound checks. Oh no, like it's all set up already. Most people think. Well, not most, some.
Some people, I would say that like when you get behind it, you realize the complexity of it. But let's dig a little deeper, man. Because first of all, that's like an amazing story, and I
Yes.
remember like the original gym
Yes.
because I used to cycle down here, and I would
Yes.
see it, and then I do a lot of running and cycling, so I'd run past it when it was still out over on the corner there,
We started with just the one spot,
and then you expanded out.
and then we expanded. There was a bike shop there,
Yep.
and then we actually like we needed more room, so I negotiated a deal with them. Like I pretty much said, like, "Hey, I'll pay you guys to leave." So I gave them some money to leave. So we took over the bike shop. Then all of a sudden we're running out of room again, and then we're just finding anything, and then we took the corner, which is now the thrift shop.
Yeah.
And then we're like, "Oh no, we're running out of room again." So then we got the big place.
Now, when you got the big place, it was the original landlord who was like, initially was like, no, no, no. Like when you were like, hey, we actually have to go, was he like bummed?
No, because first off, okay, we were on the end of our lease. So we kind of lucked out on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like we're running out on a lease. We were right at the end. And then the thing was is that they actually were able to find a second, like, because what happened was we actually our lease extended past when we were going to leave. And obviously I'm a man of my word and honor, and like we signed a contract. So I was ready to pay for whatever was left over. Like
Yeah.
there was maybe 3 months left. But what happened was they found a new tenant that wanted it right away.
Yeah.
So it kind of worked out for both of us.
Do you feel like that guy who had kind of judged you and thought negatively of you, did he think he learned a little bit of a lesson?
Well, it's funny because, okay, there was actually a story like Jordan and the guy, like the original guy, the two of them. The original guy, it's funny because he loved me after because he saw how busy we got and his son was into martial arts and he saw like, oh, how much we did. But then something happened. He did get mad at me. The Jordan was very happy for me. The other partner wasn't as happy
That you left.
that we were leaving. And then he started because like he actually started harassing us a little bit. Yeah.
Because you were leaving.
Yes.
Because you were going because you'd grown and you needed a bigger space.
Yes.
Which is like, again, this is one of those things as a business owner. Normal people who don't own businesses would never think that this is like a thing that would happen.
It happened. But not only that too, actually, and now I'm remembering the story. They were mad at us during COVID time too. Because that was actually like that was one of the hardest things that, now people are starting to really understand it a little bit more because now COVID's done. So what happened was we had the plans for the big gym, the new one now, before COVID. And then now we're in the middle of trying to get this all together and like put this thing together. COVID hits, we're shut down. We have to come up with all this money. We have still paying bills. We're trying to rent it. We're trying to like build this new gym. It was so hard.
How did you maintain and actually grow and build a busy during that time?
Number one, like first off, you have to be tough. We went through some really hard times. That was probably one of the hardest times in my life. There was a day we got a bill and it was an unexpected bill. And we're talking a 6-figure bill. And we tapped out already. Like I already went through all the personal lines of credit. Like, all of my savings already went in. And now you're getting a 6-figure bill. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this, like, I was pretty much like crying because I'm like, okay, this is done because I can't do this and we're not open. So you got to remember too, out of the 2 years or out of the 3 years, 2 years of COVID, we were closed for like 9 months. So we were closed half the time. And so, like I said, it's like, it was hard. And then number one, like my mom, like I fucking love my mom. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear.
Oh, you're swearing. Right?
I love my mom because like she taught me hard work and she was willing to put her house for sale just so we can keep going. Like a lot of people don't understand that. Like, they see, like we talked about, they just see this multi-million-dollar facility and they don't know what's behind the story. Like my mom was willing to she did put her house up for sale, but somehow now you ask me, how did I do it? I read a line. And the lines, like I love reading, and everyone, you know that. Like anything to do with business, you should read, and to be smart, you gotta read. And one of the lines I read was, "Champions don't complain; they just get better." So a lot of people during that time wanted to fight the government. Oh, well, let us open this and that, or like there was both sides. There was people saying, "Hey, shut down," and then there was people saying, "Open up," and like they just wanted to fight the government. The thing is like I didn't want to do that. I wanted to find ways to become better. And the ways I did it was I spent time researching, and there was all these, because of COVID, this, there was a whole bunch of grants and loans and all these things and special programs. And what I did is I looked for all of them and I applied and I spent the time doing all the paperwork and we applied for all this stuff to get the help. We got some of it.
So I remember when the pandemic was happening and I saw the corner gym was vacated. I just assumed you guys were gone. And I didn't have any connection to it because my kid wasn't old enough to be doing it. I don't do martial arts. So I was like, oh crap, another small business went down. And then my partner and I are both vegan, so we go to Vegan Supply all the time. And I was like, holy crap, like they moved to this insane location. But since things have like really opened up, it's like everyone I know is suddenly connected to this gym. Like multiple people in our company train at your gym, and you don't even know about it. They go and take kickboxing classes and these things. And the more I looked into your gym, and the more that I heard about the story, like how you grew up in East Van, how you came from like a single family home, and when you how you found martial arts. You grew up kind of fighting, and then martial arts kind of gave you that thing to focus on. It made me so interested in you as a person, but also you as a business leader. And again, there's so much to talk about here, but I really want to focus on like, okay, champions don't complain. You got through it, you made it happen. But how did you build this level of community within this space? Because like the level of community there is palpable. Like you go in and you feel like people are like literally saying, "Hey, come join us."
The thing is, like, I have to say that I got that from my mom. Like, my mom was always welcoming, and like, my mom was always funny. She's like, "Hey, you want to eat? You know, you want to eat?" Like, hey, anytime like my friends came over, we are just like always like that. My mom. I have to say, I got that from my mom. Like, really, I got that from my mom. I was always taught, to always just be nice, be a good person, and you want like something else I read too. Like, when you die, no one's gonna ever remember the things that you own. No one's gonna remember the car that you had, the house you had, the jewelry, the shoes, none of that. What they'll remember is what you did for them, and that's something I always think about. So I always try to instill that, and then what I do is I instill that with all the staff, and then it's like it just spreads. You know what I mean? The hard part is that a virus spreads faster than than good,
Yeah.
which is really bad. But that's why we try to curb it right away and stop it. But when it comes to the good, like that's just it just spreads. And then obviously you have to pick the right people, and then really at, when you're all nice and being all this, things go by a lot faster and it's a lot more fun. You know.
The thing is though, like, okay, so you it was instilled in you through your mom, and
Mhm.
same with like hard work,
Yes.
and like basically gonna whatever you're gonna gain in life, you got to work for.
Yes.
You start this gym out of your garage, but how many employees are at DCS right now?
Including the yoga studio, I think we're at between 50 and 70 now.
So, dude, you started this thing where it was like, oh yeah, just me and my friends training out of a
Yeah.
gym, and now you have like 50 and 70 people. There's a bigger gap that we're not hitting on is how did you learn to like literally run a business and be a boss of like a really large organization? Because that's not a small organization anymore. That's like getting pretty big.
It's just like fighting. I always relate everything to fighting. How do you go from becoming an amateur fighter to a professional fighter? You work hard, you learn. You have to learn all these new techniques, and then okay, and then practice it. And so, for example, like the business part, like it's actually funny when we went from the two little spots to the big one. I read a book, and this book helped me so much. The E Myth,
Mhm.
the entrepreneurial myth, that helped me so much. Like, and then that taught me stuff. Like, hey, you know what? This is like, it's not. Sometimes when people look at things, they think it's chaos. Like, say, for example, even fighting. Everyone thinks that fighting is very complicated and this and that. It can be. But if you simplify it down, okay, it's not, it could be, you can make it simple. Same with business. Like, it is big. The bigger you get, the bigger you get, it seems like it's going to be harder. But if you have, like, say, for example, what they say, you have systems in place, standing operating procedures, you delegate roles, and the number one thing we talked about too, which is very hard, is don't take things personal. you know One of the other things, like you talked about the welcoming vibe, this and that. One other thing I forgot to touch on, what's very important, I try to really instill in all of the staff, is always put yourself in other people's shoes. Like, always. Like, even the littlest things, even though you might be okay with this, do you think other people are going to be okay with that? You know what I mean? So we really try to, like, I really try to instill putting yourself in other people's shoes. For me, I can tell you that I've lived all around the world. Like, I've lived everywhere, and I've
Through
spent
fighting.
through fighting. Yes, like I lived in Thailand, I lived in the Philippines, I live in the States too, and I visited different places as well. And doing all this stuff has made me see that there are so many different mentalities and views on life, that you have to be able to put things in perspective of other people, in terms of how they grew up and what they believe in. And so that's very important, because like what you believe might not be the same thing that someone else believes. Something that you like, they might not like. Something that bothers you might not bother them. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think one of the worst things that's happened, and it is a bit. People blame the internet, but I'd say I think like people blame the media, they blame the internet, but I also just think like the tension within society, being this like really polarized, like one side or the other. If you're like this, then you're bad, or if you're like this, then you're good. I also like I kind of look at myself when I was younger a little bit, like when I got into being a therapist or the kind of music I played and the values that are associated with it. I kind of look at myself and being like, damn, like the idea of having certain opinions as like, oh, if I believe these things, that makes me a good person. And if you believe those things, that makes you a bad person. Like, I don't want to blame the internet or media or any of that because I think that's kind of like a cheap way of talking about where we're at. I think now more than ever, it's super important to really have empathy and be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, not just as a business person, but as like a person living in the world. Because like casting people out and like hating on people or creating these big divisions, it's like it's such a momentary like I've won this thing or I've made this point. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh yeah, well, I got to live on this planet for another like 50, 60, 70 years. Like if I live like that, I'm going to live in an increasingly chaotic environment rather than being like, I want to understand this person. I want to understand this situation. It's trite to say, but I think it's like really having empathy and putting yourself in the shoes of other people has probably never been more important from a societal point of view than it is now.
Well, especially now too with how fast things go with so like and even you talk about the internet, but it's not even just like it's the social media thing. And now especially now where like they always talk about in society they do like what's the word I'm trying to say? Like they want to fix things, they overcorrections of everything. So now with the whole cancel culture too and stuff, you know what I mean? You have to be very careful and like it's hard.
It is hard. I have a really, really good friend of mine who's a business owner,
Yeah.
lives in the States. And we are gonna have him on the podcast, and he was like, "I can't be on the podcast right now." And I asked him why, and he was like, "I caught some people in the company stealing,
Yeah.
and I fired them, and then they went on social media and like said like all of this stuff about the business." And he's like, "I literally have them on video stealing,
Yeah.
and I didn't call the cops on them. I didn't do this stuff. I just fired them." And he's like, "I actually gave him severance when I fired him."
I'm dealing with something so similar too. Yeah.
And he was like, it's like it's this weird paralysis because like how am I going to get on and talk about like running a business and being ethical and then have this stuff in the background? And it's such a wild time to be a person, but it's a really wild time to be a business owner.
Well, the other thing is too, like even because I deal with a lot of stuff, and the thing is that at the end of the day, like say for example yourself, you're a business owner. People like we actually lose. Like say if you have example, it goes to like a court or something, they'll usually side with the employee, and that's not how is that fair? The way they look at it is they think that the employer is the bigger dog, like the bigger fish, and they got more money. But we're just like everyone else, and it's not fair.
Well, and also we assumed the risk and took the leap and did these things.
Yes.
It's tough because like there's a lot of cases that could be made either way. But I'd say right now, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner,
Very hard.
really hard. But also being like a visible community member like you are.
Yes.
It allows you to do lots of good things, but it opens you up to a lot of challenging things you got to manage.
Well, the thing is that I know, like, it's so funny. When I first opened the gym, I knew that I was becoming a role model. So, like, obviously, I'm human before. Well, I'm human still now, but like, I'm human. Like, I used to go out drinking, and make a fool of myself a little bit. But I knew that I couldn't do that no more. So I actually quit. I haven't drank in 9 years now.
Good for you.
So and that was mostly because of I know I have an image to protect, and like it's not even just an image, but this is who I am, and I don't want to give anyone any reason to not believe that this is who I am. Like even going out, I don't go out, I don't go to nightclubs, I don't do any of that stuff anymore, and well because I work so much anyway, but I don't really have the desire to do that anymore too. But it is like you said, because you get put on this pedestal. One thing else I realize is that a lot of people like I love you guys. Like you guys, you know, this is what really good people do. Is that they're happy for other people to get up there. But then there's some people that they don't want that. Like one thing I noticed is that at the beginning of the gym, like I don't want to talk about too much because this is negative and I don't like talking about negative. But like when I was going, everyone wanted me to be successful. But then all of a sudden I realized like when I started getting super successful, they're like, "Whoa, man, hold on, we got to pull you back here for a sec." You know what I mean?
Totally. You kind of hit escape velocity with you got the way that I look at it, with my career, everything was unintentional. I didn't mean to end up here,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of why it ended up working out. Like I was a therapist playing in punk bands. I kind of took this other job in executive coaching. It became this thing, and I remember when I started to feel like, oh, like people were kind of like criticizing, like, oh, I'll never forget. I it's the first time I ever bought something really nice for myself. I bought
Yeah.
a really nice watch. And the reason I bought a really nice watch is because I was in like a lot of meetings with CEOs,
Yeah.
and it's like it sounds stupid, but it's actually like a thing.
No, it is a thing.
I had this buddy of mine at the time criticize me buying this watch, and like really like kind of out of the blue, and I was like, basically it was like, well, it's a poser move to go and buy like a nice watch if you haven't like worked your way up in the watch world, and I was like, I'll never forget that moment because it was the moment where I was like, I think I've kind of entered a different lane,
Yeah.
and I think that the people around me, some of the people around me are gonna be psyched, even if they don't understand it. They're gonna be psyched. The people who do understand it are gonna be psyched. The people who don't understand it but like are just like good friends are gonna do it, and the people who maybe just don't want other people to have success or happiness are gonna be like that. And one of the things I really had to learn, and I've learned it in the past 5 years, is like letting go of relationships without there being conflict or beef. Like it doesn't have, you don't have to have a fight to stop being friends. You can just kind of like let things
Yeah.
go. And it's been really difficult.
Well, it's hard because like I'm dealing with it now too, but like you have to be around people that make you better first off. And that's even that's one of the mottos of the gym is we want like that place is somewhere where we all can push to be better individuals. Now the other thing is that you don't want that negativity around. And it just sucks because sometimes sometimes you have it with people that are your friends for like 10, 20 years, right? But you got to let it go. And, and and the other thing is too, when you start becoming successful, you become successful when you have the haters and you have the people that are like that. That's just it's part of it.
Is
You know me,
that
I
so
always
weird
it's
though?
it's it's normal though, because you think about it like even like this. I always relate everything to fighting. When you're the champion, there's people that love you being the, but there's always just as many that want you to lose. You know what I mean? There's always going to be that not every single person is going to want you to be the champ. You know, they're going to always find ways to bring it down. Like, hey, no, he's not as good as he is. Like, da 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 da. No, I want that guy to win. And, you know, and everyone else has another favorite. So it's part of the game. And one thing I've learned is like, you know, you just have to accept it because it's a part of it.
It is part of the game. And I love that you say that. It's a little bit like, when I was younger, I used to be like, oh, I don't compete with people. I only compete with myself. And I had this kind of like, not anti-competition mindset, but like, I wasn't like into the idea of
Yeah.
competing. And you know, with the past few years, I'm like, oh, everything is competition. And competition doesn't have to be toxic. It can just be like, oh, I actually like competing. It brings out the best. And this business is a competition.
No.
Like all of that stuff. Well, like what I love when you talk about the idea of bringing it back to fighting, it's like, yeah, but if you don't think of fighting as a negative thing, like fighting, but like, oh, it's like kind of it brings out the best in you. It helps you like bring your training, your working, all these things to create the greatest thing. In my space, it's about creating a business that really helps people and creating a business where anyone who works in the business can have a great quality of life. I want to train like that. I want to work like that. I want to fight like that. And now I'm actually like really into the idea of competition. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like when you're doing this, you're going to have as many people who are rooting for you as many people who are hating on you.
Yeah.
But not that what you went back to is not taking it personal. Like if I go back to that, it's like one of my biggest struggles, but something I think I'm starting to get my head around a little.
I'm the same. Like I take things too personal too. Like I said, like I have people that I can see that they don't want me as successful, and then I think about like what did I ever do to them? You know, but you can't take it personal. You know what I mean?
The focus, like I know it's an all ages gym and it's a very inclusive space. There's a real focus on programming for youth, which I think is like, I mean, as a parent, I think is unbelievable. So how did you land with that and then develop that?
Well, the first thing is like a lot of people don't know this, but the main reason I opened the gym was because I know if I didn't have martial arts when I was a kid, I don't know where I'd be. So the thing is, kids don't, or young children don't have to follow the path that I did exactly. They don't have to take martial arts, then compete, then fight. But what it is they'll have these values that are instilled. They learn that hard work does pay off. They learn that they learn the discipline. You know, they learn organizational skills somewhat. You know what I mean? And so the thing is, in terms of having a kids program, I knew I always had to have kids program because obviously that's what I learned. That's how I started. Now, sorry, this is totally off topic, but it's even right now, for example, Manny Sobral, our boxing coach, Olympian, world champion, he always wanted to do this. Like, sorry, he always wanted to have like a youth foundation. He always wanted to help problem children and troubled youth. And the thing was, we tried to do it for years, and we were trying to build a foundation, get donations to pay for these kids, and then this year, like actually just started last week, we're just like, forget it. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna do it. We're gonna not think about the money, like don't worry about the money. Manny's willing to donate his time. I don't mind donating the space in my time too as well, and we're just gonna do it. And then like we can even call it like a karma class. We want to get good karma and we want to do this kind of stuff. So now back to the programming, you just like we our first kids class, I'll never forget, we had like 6 kids, then it built to like 10, 20, and then all of a sudden 50, now 80 to 100. Now the thing is with the kids is when it comes to the programming, I found out first off that there's kids that like striking and then there's kids that like grappling. And you never know. And sometimes it gets funny because you'll bring two siblings, two brothers or a brother sister, and one will it's always I'd say majority, not all, but one will gravitate to one and one will gravitate to the other. It's kind of funny. But when it comes to that, then I started like if right now we run about 6 to 8 kids classes at one time.
Yeah.
And if I had it the way I like we would love to have it, would be that there would be 3 age categories and 3 levels between each one. So say example, there's 4 to 6 year olds, beginner, intermediate, advanced. The thing was the 4 to 6 is a little harder because I don't think there'll be any advanced kids at 6 years. Like it's just the mental capacity. So it's okay. 4 to 6 is just one group. But then the 7 to 10, that's when you start doing the beginner, intermediate, advanced. And then 10 to 14 would be beginner, intermediate, advanced, whether it be in jiu-jitsu, boxing, or kickboxing. Yes.
So like even the way that you're breaking all this stuff down, it's like really practical business minded, but it's also like really focused on how do I give people the best experience.
Yes.
And man, like when we go to the gym, because again, it's not like my partner and I like literally use the gym. We just go there with our kid.
Yeah.
And just that like this is a really inclusive space. And inclusivity is something that's thrown around in the business world like everywhere.
Yes.
But your space actually is, from at least from our perspective, but also the perspectives of the people that work in our company who also go to your gym, is really inclusive. So how did you establish that, but then also maintain that?
Well, the number one thing is everyone's equal. No one's better than anyone. And then, like I said, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. Like one of the biggest things that we get a lot of compliments on is we have gender inclusive bathrooms. It was very important to me. Like even when we opened our yoga studio, there was only supposed to be 2 bathrooms. I'm like, no, I don't care. You guys, we have to find, it costs us extra money, but no, we have to have a gender inclusive. We have to make these people feel comfortable and let people know that we're thinking about them. That's the most important thing that actually you got to do. Like I said, put yourself in other people's shoes, but think about them and show them that, hey, you know what? I think about you and that I want to find a way to make you, whoever it is, happy. You know what I mean? Whatever, whoever you are.
All right, man, we're coming to the end of the interview. I'm going to ask you one question, and then after that, there's going to be 3 questions. They're going to get increasingly more challenging, the last 3. But the first one is, in becoming like a leader, because that's what you are, a leader, a boss, a business owner, what's one thing that you've learned about yourself that you were really pleasantly surprised by? And one thing that you've learned about yourself that you were disappointed to learn, but you've been working on?
Well, like we talked about, the disappointing one is like I take things too personal. Like like to be a business owner, you can't. Like the bigger you get, you just have to let things go. The one thing that leader, like, that's a good question. I don't really ever sit down and think what I'm good at. Like, I want to be a better leader. Like I try to read things. I read a lot, and I talk to other people that are leaders, and I talk to them how they, what makes them better, and
it's easy to focus on what you're disappointed
you're bad
on.
at, but I don't know. Like what I can say is okay. This one I know, and this one I do say a lot. I know no one can outwork me.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I know. Like it was funny because just even last week I have a new employee, and he was a member at the gym actually, and he went up to me 3 days after, or maybe a week after he started working. He says to me, I never knew you worked so much. I'm like, he goes, because he would come, like, he would see me at the gym 16-hour days.
I've never been there and not seen you.
Yeah, like well, unless I'm out of town, then I'm not there. But I work right now, especially now. I work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Like, and then what people, like, a lot of people don't know is when I'm out of town, because I own another gym in America, the MMA lab. That one I have partners in, and that one's a little easier because, like, obviously it's running, and then they don't really need me as much, and then I check on them, and then but then when I'm gone, if I'm gone, like 90% of the time I'm gone, or 95% is because I have to go to the lab, or I have to do with our fighters at the lab at the UFC. Yeah.
All right, you ready for your 3 questions?
Yes.
All right, so the thing that the thing that you're disappointed to know about, but you're working on is you're trying to take things less personally, but the
Yes.
thing that you were pleasantly surprised by is like, how hard you're able to work. Okay, here's the 3 questions. They're going to get increasingly hard.
Yeah.
The first one that I want to ask you is, you are a business owner in the downtown east side, and you're in the like real deal
Yes.
downtown east side. So how do you, what are the things that you put in place to respect the true community there, and the community be everyone who lives in the community, people who own, really nice houses in Strathcona, but also people who are living in tents on the street. We're all a part of this community. Nobody's discounted.
No,
So as a
100%.
business owner, how do you keep that as a part of how you run your business?
What do you mean by that? Like, how do you keep it inclusive?
Not necessarily how you keep it inclusive, but as an example, let's say someone who owns a business might be like, oh, I just want all these homeless people to get out of here because it screws up my street traffic.
Well, the thing with them is that anytime it comes to the homeless people and even the encampment and all that stuff and all the people, I do a ton. Like, the global news came even this week, and the CTV, they always come and talk to me about this. It's not about us versus them. It's about getting them the help. It's like us helping each other.
Because we're all actually a part of the community.
Yes.
And if you view people as something that need to be like, if you're a business owner and you view the people who literally live in the community as a nuisance, then you're not actually a part of this community.
Exactly. That's why I always tell everyone, like, it's not us versus them.
Yeah.
It's not like it's all of us. We all need to work together, and then we need help from the government. Like, we're all like kids, and the dad and parents, or the mom and dad, or the government. Hey, we need your help. You know what I mean?
Because your business you've got 2 storefront businesses that are really in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And I think your perspective on how to equally respect all people that live in the neighborhood is like an important one to touch
Oh,
on.
you respect all of them, but at the same time, you have to be careful, because obviously we don't want innocent people in danger. And then number one, and number two, it's like, well, there's laws. There's things you can't do. Like, you can't be like doing graffiti. You can't be threatening people. You can't steal. You know what I mean? And you can't do any vandalism. Like, for us, like, we don't really talk about it too much, but like, even the other day, like, maybe last 2 3 months ago, somebody set like, our gym almost went on fire. Somebody was like, they were trying to I guess they were cold. They wanted to set a bonfire. They put it right behind on our garage door, and they put the garage door on fire. Like, luckily it was metal and it didn't catch fire, but, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did a mattress fire. That's what they did, actually. Sorry. They lit a mattress on fire.
It's a difficult situation, but if we're going to choose to own businesses in this area, then it's like, how do we find a way to be respectful of everyone while maintaining healthy boundaries that allow us to lead healthy businesses?
Like I said, everyone has to follow the rules, I guess. Some people don't like to hear that, but if everyone followed the rules, the businesses and even the people, then we can all help each other. And then obviously, like, even the government has to follow the rules. Like, hey, you know what?
Good luck on that.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and obviously we all try and you know what? That's a good question too. It's like, we have to help each other. Like, another thing is not even how the BIA is helping us right now. Like, the BIA is helping, and then now we're slowly seeing it. Like, actually, I did the interview last week. You can see the street cleaners are always on the street now. There's police presence. They're walking around now, just like, just making sure everyone's safe. Because we know how much bad things happen around here.
I know that honor and integrity is a huge part of the martial arts culture, and I also know it's a big part of you carrying that. Where did that come from you? Did it come from how you were raised by your mom? Did it come from martial arts? Did it come from something inside of you? How did you learn those values?
Well, number one, my mom taught me, like, obviously my mom taught me, like, a lot. She taught me about being a good person. Like, she taught me hard work. Like, my mom, like, I I think my mom. I think I can work hard, but I think my mom can outwork me. I think maybe. Okay, maybe actually. That's maybe. But when it comes to the honor and all that stuff, it was actually through martial arts. Like I actually became when I was young, I was really infatuated with the samurai culture. And in the samurai culture, it's all about your honor. Like I don't know if you know about samurai culture, but like even if they lost their honor, they would commit what's called seppuku, which is suicide. You know, I don't believe in that, but like I'm just saying that's how much they believed in honor. And then you know what? Because at the end of the day, who are you? You are no one without your honor. The only thing that the most valuable, like I actually have a tattoo on my back, and I have a samurai protecting the pagoda, and there's two symbols in the pagoda: honor and family, because those are the two most important things in your life that you should like. If you have no honor and you don't protect your family, then like, what kind of person are you? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. All right, last question. So this one is actually not hard, but because I know we got to run, I'm gonna
No
make it
problem.
easy. So thriving business, you've expanded. Now you've got a yoga studio. Where can people look you up, find out about DCS, find out about you personally? Like, this is a place where I'd love you to just like hype yourself up, hype up the gym.
Well, the crazy thing is, obviously, just Google us.
Yeah.
But obviously, our Instagram at DS Combat Sports, our Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, our website, dscombatsports.com, just DS Combat Sports, period.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Listen, man, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know we had a little bit of a compressed
I'm
time
sorry,
frame,
yeah.
but no way. This is a great conversation. Anything you want to share as we're closing off?
Um, like this is to all entrepreneurs and stuff, right? Like I would like to let them know, like, because even me, things go up and down. You just gotta go work through everything. You know what I mean? And then they talk about this a lot. Like, you know me, I always like to read a lot. And it's not about even just about the motivation. What really is, it's about the consistency. And it's about being able to go in every day and do the same thing over and over again. And like that's fighting. And that's the hardest thing is like a lot of people don't want to do the same thing over. But like say for example a fighter, what are you gonna do? Like how do you win a fight? A basic punch, a basic kick. You got to be able to do it over and over every day. You name any sport. Like me, I'm a big Steph Curry fan. Steph Curry doesn't change the way he shoots the ball. He shoots the ball the same way every day, and he has to do it consistently every day.
So consistency is the key.
Well, it is, and it just being able to do, yeah, it's consistency. They talk like that one Aristotle quote. Oh, something habit. Oh,
Dude, you shot for the sky. You're gonna do an Aristotle
ah.
quote at the end.
Let me find it for you. I have to find it. Hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to grab my phone, but I have to find it. It's something. Oh no. My best friend John Crouch. This is his favorite line, and I always mess it up. Always. It's something about habit and consistency. Like, oh, you know that.
I'll just tell you, this will be the first Aristotle quote on the podcast. So
Oh,
we
we
gotta
have to
drop it
find
hard,
it
man.
now.
Hit it hard.
We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act but a habit.
Hell yeah. All right. What a better way to end the interview.
I can't believe I don't remember that.
Ryan Diaz. Thanks for coming out, man.
We
really
I'm
appreciate
embarrassed
it.
I didn't remember
No,
that. It was
that's-
me trying to quote something.
That's perfect. Perfect ending. All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Everyone will see you in the outro. And Mike, drop the beat. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for what you do for the community. I know that our family's life has been so positively impacted by having DCS here and your involvement in all the programming there. So thank you. You know, everyone, it's such an interesting thing because like combat sports, for anyone who sees me on video or who's come across me, is I'm not a big guy and I'm not a tough guy. So I'm not like a guy that's like really a follower of things like combat sports. I'm not even really that much into sports. But the idea of getting our daughter into something like this as a way of like a great activity, to be a part of the community, meet other kids, get exercise, but also that confidence that's involved in really mastering a sport. So huge. But then where do you go? Like what gym do you go to? How do you know it's going to be a good fit for your kid? Right when we walked in the door at DCS, it was such a great experience, and it's still proved to be that week after week. You know, we go to jiu-jitsu really frequently with our daughter, and she just loves it, and she's a part of something there. And for me, it's like, what's cooler than that? Than someone who just creates something that really attends to the needs of all ages, that provides an outlet, provides exercise, provides a sense of community, and does it in a part of town that really needs stuff like that. So Ryan and the whole crew over at DCS, thank you so much. And for anyone who's listening to this and kind of thinking like, wow, you know, like I want to do something like that, then do it. You can do it. Again, all it takes is some vision, some grit, and the willingness to take the leap. So with that, we're going to end off. My name is Aram Arslanian, and this is One Step Beyond.